September 14th, 1944. A converted warehouse near the Luxembourg border hastily transformed into a forward intelligence collection point for the German Army Group B. Major Klaus Zimmermann of Foreign Armies West sat at a battered wooden table, surrounded by documents that American forces had abandoned during their rapid advance across France. Among the routine paperwork, requisition forms and tactical maps lay a single folder marked with red circles on its cover. Inside were daily operational reports from something called the Red Ball Express. Zimmermann had spent 3 years analyzing Allied capabilities. He understood American industrial capacity in abstract terms, had read the production statistics, had studied the intelligence assessments from Berlin, but the papers before him represented something different. These were not propaganda claims or intelligence estimates. They were mundane operational logs, the bureaucratic paperwork of routine military logistics, and the numbers they contained were impossible. According to the daily summary dated August 29, 1944, American truck convoys had delivered 12,342 tons of supplies in a single day. Zimmermann read the figure 3 times, checking for errors in translation, searching for some indication this represented cumulative weekly totals or included naval shipments. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The document was clear. 12,000 tons, one day, trucks alone. He compared this to his own experience. Army Group B, containing multiple corps with over 200,000 men, received perhaps 3,000 tons daily through all methods combined: truck, rail, and horse-drawn transport. The Americans were moving 4 times that amount using only road transport, sustaining armies advancing so rapidly that traditional supply methods had collapsed entirely. The folder contained 83 days of operational reports, each documenting tonnages that exceeded German logistics capacity for entire army groups. Zimmermann felt something shift in his understanding, not the gradual accumulation of evidence that characterized most intelligence work, but a sudden crystalline comprehension that changed everything. Germany was not losing to better tactics or superior courage. Germany was losing to arithmetic. The Americans had built a logistics system that operated on a scale German military thinking could not accommodate, and the proof sat in routine paperwork that no one had ever intended as psychological warfare. The journey to this moment of clarity had begun months earlier, though its roots stretched back to fundamental German miscalculations about American industrial character. Throughout 1943 and into 44, German intelligence services had tracked Allied production with increasing alarm. The statistics were staggering: American factories producing more tanks in months than Germany built in years. Aircraft production exceeding Luftwaffe output by factors of 4 or 5 to 1. Ship construction that made the Battle of the Atlantic mathematically unwinnable, but statistics remained abstract. Production numbers on paper could be dismissed as propaganda, questioned as exaggeration, or rationalized as inferior quality, compensating through quantity. German leadership maintained faith that American equipment would prove unreliable, that American soldiers lacked fighting spirit, that American logistics would collapse under operational stress. After all, building weapons in factories was one thing. Delivering those weapons across oceans, through hostile territory, to advancing armies hundreds of miles from ports was something else entirely. The German High Command expected American supply lines to break. Every principle of military logistics that German officers had learned, every lesson from previous wars, every constraint that limited German operations, all suggested that American advances across France would inevitably outrun their supply capacity. The laws of logistics were immutable. Armies could only advance as fast as supplies could follow. The Americans were advancing at speeds that should have created catastrophic supply failures. Yet the supply failures never materialized. American forces that suffered setbacks were reinforced within days. Artillery units fired support missions consuming ammunition at rates that would exhaust German stocks in hours, then continued firing the next day and the day after that. Tank formations advanced without the fuel pauses that German doctrine assumed were inevitable. The Americans were violating every principle of logistics warfare, and German intelligence needed to understand how. The breakthrough in understanding came not through dramatic intelligence coups or sophisticated analysis, but through the mundane capture of routine paperwork during Germany's chaotic retreat across France. As American forces advanced rapidly following the Normandy breakout in late July 1944, they occasionally moved so quickly that administrative units abandoned documents in haste to avoid encirclement. German rearguard formations, sweeping through areas the Americans had temporarily occupied, collected whatever papers they found, forwarding everything to intelligence units for evaluation. Most captured documents proved routine and uninformative. Personal letters, training manuals, administrative forms of no intelligence value. But occasionally, the haul included operational documents that revealed details of American capabilities and methods. In early September, a Wehrmacht infantry company occupying a farmhouse near Chartres discovered a metal filing cabinet that American Transportation Corps officers had abandoned when their unit displaced forward. The cabinet contained operational records from Red Ball Express truck companies, daily logs documenting convoy movements, tonnage delivered, fuel consumed, maintenance performed. The company commander, recognizing potential intelligence value, sent the documents up the chain of command. They reached Major Zimmermann's collection point on September 13th. He began reviewing them the following morning, expecting routine logistics paperwork of minimal interest. What he found instead was documentation of an operational capability that shattered German assumptions about the limits of military logistics. The Red Ball Express, Zimmermann learned through careful reading, was an improvised emergency supply route established August 25th to sustain American armies that had advanced so rapidly across France that normal supply methods could not keep pace. 2 parallel highways had been commandeered exclusively for military supply traffic. Trucks moved in continuous convoys 24 hours daily, loaded vehicles travelling east toward advancing armies, empty trucks returning west to Normandy beaches for reloading. The scale of the operation was unprecedented in military history. Peak operations in early September involved 5,958 trucks operating simultaneously. These vehicles, supported by extensive maintenance, refueling, and traffic control infrastructure, created a continuous flow of supplies that sustained offensive operations across a 400-kilometre front. The daily tonnage figures documented in the operational logs exceeded anything Zimmermann had encountered in years of intelligence work. He began calculating systematically, converting American tons to metric tons, comparing Red Ball tonnage to German logistics capacity, analyzing what these figures meant for operational possibilities. A single American corps, roughly equivalent in manpower to a German corps, consumed supplies at rates that exceeded entire German armies. The August 29th peak delivery of 12,342 tons represented more than German Army Group B received through all logistics methods in 4 days. The truly devastating insight came from understanding what Red Ball represented within the larger American logistics system. The operational reports made clear that Red Ball was not America's primary supply method. It was an emergency backup system, implemented when rapid advances temporarily outran conventional rail-based logistics. The Americans considered Red Ball a crisis response, a temporary expedient until French railways could be repaired and the port of Antwerp opened. This emergency system that Americans viewed as inadequate delivered more tonnage than Germany's entire logistics infrastructure operating at maximum capacity. Zimmermann tried to imagine German logistics capabilities creating anything comparable. It was impossible. Germany lacked sufficient motor vehicles. The Wehrmacht remained partially horse-drawn throughout the war, with hundreds of thousands of horses providing transportation that American trucks rendered obsolete. German truck production for 1943 totaled approximately 100,000 vehicles, for all purposes, military and civilian combined. The Red Ball Express alone operated nearly 6,000 trucks simultaneously, and this represented only a fraction of American vehicle strength in Europe. German industry produced trucks in dozens of different models, each requiring unique spare parts and specialized maintenance. This fragmentation created continuous logistics nightmares, American trucks, by contrast, were standardized. The GMC CCKW 2.5-ton truck that formed Red Bull's backbone was produced in massive quantities to identical specifications. Any mechanic could service any truck. Any driver could operate any vehicle. Spare parts fit every truck in the fleet. This industrial standardization, which Americans took for granted, represented manufacturing sophistication that German industry never achieved. The maintenance reports included in the captured documents revealed operational sustainability that German forces could not match. Yet the system maintained operational capacity because sufficient reserve vehicles and maintenance capacity existed to repair damaged trucks, while others continued operations. German forces rarely possessed such maintenance depth. Vehicles broke down and remained inoperative for weeks or months, awaiting parts that might never arrive because manufacturers had ceased production or switched to different models. Zimmermann found himself confronting uncomfortable questions about German industrial capacity and strategic planning. If America could operate an emergency backup logistics system superior to Germany's maximum capacity, what did this mean for the war's outcome? German propaganda emphasized willpower, tactical superiority, and ideological commitment as decisive factors in warfare. But could these qualities overcome such fundamental material disadvantage? The captured reports documented not just tonnage delivered, but the operational methods that enabled such delivery. Drivers worked in continuous rotation, moving supplies day and night without pause. Traffic control systems managed thousands of vehicle movements daily, preventing gridlock while maintaining operational tempo. Refueling and maintenance infrastructure positioned along routes ensured mechanical issues caused minimal disruption. Military police controlled intersections, ensuring priority access for Red Bull convoys over all other traffic. The organizational sophistication impressed Zimmermann as much as the raw numbers. This was not crude brute force, simply throwing resources at problems. This was systematic application of industrial management principles to military logistics, treating supply delivery as a production process that could be optimized, standardized, and scaled. The Americans had apparently applied lessons from automotive manufacturing to military operations, creating assembly line logistics that moved supplies with factory efficiency. German logistics, by contrast, retained characteristics of earlier military eras. Horse-drawn supply columns moved at speeds determined by animal endurance. Rail transport depended on infrastructure that Allied bombing systematically destroyed. Motor transport, limited by vehicle shortages and fuel constraints, operated intermittently rather than continuously. The comparison revealed not just quantitative differences, but fundamental conceptual gaps in how the two nations approached logistics. Zimmermann spent September 14th and 15th analyzing the captured documents in detail, cross-referencing figures with other intelligence sources, searching for errors or exaggerations that might make the picture less catastrophic. He found none. Prisoner interrogations from American Transportation Corps personnel confirmed the operational details. Luftwaffe reconnaissance photographs, though limited by Allied air superiority, showed supply dumps and vehicle parks of enormous scale. Agent reports from neutral countries documented American truck production figures that explained how such vehicle fleets were possible. Every independent source confirmed the same basic reality. American logistics operated on a scale that German military experience suggested was impossible, and the Red Bull Express represented just one element of this larger capability. Zimmermann drafted a comprehensive intelligence assessment for Army Group B headquarters, documenting what the captured reports revealed about American logistics capacity. He wrote in the clinical, precise language expected of intelligence officers, presenting facts without editorial comment. The tonnage figures spoke for themselves. 12,000 tons delivered in one day by one supply route sustained American offensive operations that German logistics could never match. The implications extended beyond mere numbers. American forces could concentrate supplies for attacks at speeds German forces could not counter. When American units advanced, they maintained supply lines through massive motor transport that delivered fuel, ammunition, food, and spare parts continuously. American artillery fired support missions consuming tonnages that would exhaust German ammunition stocks within hours, then continued firing day after day because logistics supported unlimited expenditure. German defensive doctrine assumed attacking forces would eventually pause to resupply, creating opportunities for counterattacks. American logistics eliminated these pauses. Red Ball convoys ensured forward units received supplies faster than combat operations could deplete stockpiles. This capability fundamentally altered operational possibilities, enabling sustained offensives without the logistics-imposed pauses that traditional military theory considered inevitable. Zimmermann's report reached Army Group B headquarters on September 17th. General Walter Model, commanding Army Group B, was one of Germany's most capable defensive commanders. He understood material realities, had fought on the Eastern Front, where Soviet numerical superiority created similar challenges. Model read the assessment carefully, then requested Zimmermann brief senior staff officers personally. The briefing occurred September 19th in a chateau near Koblenz that served as temporary headquarters. Zimmermann presented his findings to an audience of corps and divisional commanders, operations officers, and logistics specialists. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. He began with the raw numbers, the 12,000-ton daily delivery figure, the 83 days of sustained operations, the total tonnage exceeding 400,000 tons, moved entirely by truck transport. Several officers initially questioned the figures, suggesting American sources might have exaggerated for morale purposes or that calculations included naval and rail shipments misattributed to truck transport. Zimmermann had anticipated these objections. He walked through his analysis step by step, showing how multiple independent sources confirmed the same basic facts, demonstrating that the captured documents were routine operational logs never intended for external audiences, explaining that the tonnage figures were internally consistent across 83 days of daily reports. The mathematical implications were inescapable. If one emergency supply route could deliver 12,000 tons daily, and Americans had established multiple such routes across France, then total American logistics capacity exceeded German capabilities by perhaps 10-1. General Model asked the crucial question: could German logistics create anything comparable? The answer, delivered by Army Group B's senior logistics officer, was unequivocal. Impossible. Germany lacked sufficient motor vehicles, adequate fuel stocks, and the industrial capacity to maintain such operations. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.